So tonight's lore night is about the dragon aspects. So the dragon aspects, or the great aspects, sometimes they're simply just called the aspects, are the leaders of the 5 dragon flights. We'll talk a little bit more about what a dragon flight is in a little bit, but I'll start off with more of a summary. They're actually proto-dragons that were altered by the Titans from defeating the larger proto-dragon known as Galakrond. He was a very, very large dragon, probably the single largest one, maybe probably around the size, if not maybe a little larger than Deathwing. Like, he was big, and he was also very evil and wanted to destroy things. So the Titans rewarded the dragons that had come to their aid in order to defeat Galakrond with specific powers relating to their flight, I guess to say, their dragon flight. They were kind of charged as one of the watchers over Azeroth, kind of another tool in the Titan's belt, in order to defend Azeroth against the old god threat that was still present at the time. So the dragon aspects are, we could call them the most powerful dragons of their specific sub-race or dragonflight. They actually do have the ability to transfer the powers to a successor in the event that they die or no longer are able to continue fighting for whatever reason. The event is simply called the Embrace. However, the mechanics and how it's done is largely unknown, just because hasn't really been talked about a whole lot. We just know it's possible. So something of note is after Deathwing's defeat, the aspects actually drained most of their power in order to try to defeat him. So they have a very small fraction of the current power that they have. It is possible that it can be restored, but no one really is 100% sure. So what is a dragonflight? So a dragonflight is simply just a sub-race of the dragons. They're normally designated by the different colors. There are 5 major ones, which are red, blue, green, orange, and black. There are other sub-races of them, however, these are the 5 main ones. Mostly because those were the 5 that were chosen by the Titans due to their assistance with defeating Galakrond and to helping building up Azeroth. So the dragons in each of those major 5 ones are very, very proud of the heritage and lineage. They remember, the names of all of those that have gone before. They're separated into either smaller familiar groups called broods. Each occupies and holds territories within Azeroth's less populated areas. Some are very commonly seen. I know during Wrath it was very common to see members of the Blue Dragon Flight because they had taken more of an antagonistic role in that expansion. There are many that have been driven to near extinction. So, yeah, it's kind of a spread. So each of the 5 flights kind of has its own ideologies on what to do. Once again, they are led individually by their respective colors dragon aspect, which we'll talk about next. So the 5 dragon aspects, the first one is Nozdormu, the Timeless One. He is the leader of the Bronze Dragon Flight. He was chosen by Aman'Thul to guard time itself and the ever-spinning pathways of destiny and fate. Next up is Alexandra, the Lifebinder. She was chosen by Aranar to safeguard all of life on Azeroth. And kind of actually literally her sister dragon, Ysera, the Dreamer, was chosen also by Aranar to watch over more specifically the growing wilds, and more or less to be a guardian / administrator, if we want to call it that, of the Emerald Dream. Now, for those who weren't here during the Druid lore night, I think that was 2 weeks ago. Excuse me. The Emerald Dream is a realm that was created by the Titans and, by an extent, Ysera. The Emerald Dream is more or less, I guess you could call it, a beta version of Azeroth. It was a place where, a dimension where the Titans often did kind of like experiments on like how to shape Azeroth and how to get things working properly. There's many, many layers. The one that the Druids most often inhabit is just simply Azeroth sans like intelligent races, basically. Ysera has herself only has limited control of what goes on in the Emerald Dream, and it's near impossible to permanently alter the Emerald Dream. So next up we have Malygos, who was the leader, or the blue dragon aspect. He was actually killed. You can kill him during the Eye dungeon in Wrath of the Lich King. That's what it was. So he is able to be killed. The current blue dragon aspect is Kalecgos, the spell weaver. Now the blue dragons safeguard magic and hidden arcanum. They're kind of, I guess, the guardians of how magic works on Azeroth. And last, which is probably the most notable of all of the dragon aspects, is Neltharion, who is also known as Deathwing. He was originally the black dragon aspect, the Earth Warder. He was given domain over the earth and the deep places of the world by Khaz'goroth, which is one of the Titans. Unfortunately, he was driven mad by the whisperings of the old gods and managed to drive the blue dragon fight to near extinction. There isn't really a clear replacement for Neltharion, since he is the second dragon aspect to die, and the only one that really doesn't have a quote-unquote replacement. Kind of a rough replacement for him is actually Thrall. Thrall was empowered and was chosen to serve as the aspect of Earth during the fight to defeat Deathwing. However, it is unknown if he actually still retains his more aspect of Earth duties, since he's an orc and not a dragon. So the first appearance of an aspect that we see in the game is actually Malygos. He is, like I said before, he's the boss within the Eye of Eternity, within the Nexus, that dungeon. I think it was a dungeon. The Nexus is the home base, or the kind of central hub of the Blue Dragon flight. So he led a fight against all mortal spellcasters, believing that magic was too prevalent within the world because of the mortals' reckless use of arcane and fel and other magics. He's the first one to die, and thus be replaced. Alexandra next appears in the Wormrest Temple in the Dragonblight. The red dragonflight is actually one of the main opposition during this time, where Malygos was kind of going a little crazy and trying to kill a whole bunch of people for using magic. She formed the coalition of all of the other dragonflights, even the black one, because it was prior to kind of Deathwing waking up and destroying everything, because this is all the way back in Wrath. She formed the Wormrest Accord, which was, like I said, an allegiance of all of the other dragonflights, the red, green, bronze, and black, in order to defeat Malygos. We see Ysera appear in the Emerald Dragon Shrine and Dragonflight. The Lord Aetherius, I think that's how you pronounce his name, um, was sent as her ambassador to the Wormrest Accord, so she's never actually physically there. More or less, she just sent, like, this is my representation. Norsdormu appears briefly during the Mystery of the Infinite at the Bronze Dragon Shrine. Chrononormu, who is much easier to pronounce as Chromie, is Norsdormu's ambassador to the Wormrest Accord, and actually probably one of the most prominent members of a Dragonflight that we see throughout WoW. She does a lot of things during kind of like the Wrath of the Lich King era into Cataclysm. We see her do a lot of different things. She is obsessed with like time and making sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. So that's why she often recruits us to go back in time and fix something that isn't quite right. Such as in Wrath, when the Blue Dragon's Flight tried to change what happened in Strathholm. It was Chromie who actually sent us back in order to correct that. So Deathwing, at the time, as an Aetherion, appears in a flashback during the prison of Yogg, Saron, and Ulduar. It shows him during the creation of the Dragon Soul. Obviously, he makes a very grand entrance again as Deathwing in the Cataclysm expansion, and is like I said before, the second dragon aspect to die. Nalus, kind of was just, I guess, just as a side note, Nalus was the Black Dragon Flight aspect, or the Black Dragon Flight ambassador to the Wormrest Accord. So with Deathwing and everything, at the very end, all of the dragon aspects channel their power into the Dragon Soul in order to finally kill him. During this time, they actually lost their powers and become quote-unquote mortal beings. As much, I mean, they were immortal before, in the respect that it takes a really, really long time for a dragon to naturally die. I'm talking hundreds of millennia in order to die of old age. But they were like technically fully immortal before, but now they're not. But they're not going to die of old age anytime soon. Their humanoid forms noticeably did lose their kind of like eye glow effect. The last spark of each aspect's power resides in the heart of the aspect's mounts, as well as the soul of the aspect companions that we're able to obtain. So something of note is, despite losing their aspect powers, the dragons of the various flights are still magical and still can manipulate things that were related to the charge of their flight. So they can still life magic. The Guardians of Arcanum, Chromie can still travel through time. Black dragons can still manipulate the earth, etc. So they didn't lose any of their their powers necessarily. They just don't. The specific aspects just don't have as much control as they formerly did. So another thing cool of note is that the humanoid forms of the dragon aspects are simply chosen at will. That's not something that they like it's chosen from them, or that's their form. It's just something that they pick in order to blend in. Obviously, a giant-ass dragon stomping around Stormwind, trying to ask questions, is going to cause a lot of issues. So they more prefer to take a humanoid form. Most of them choose elves in some respect. Deathwing and I think Caligos chooses a human form. Chromie obviously chooses a gnome. Um, so yeah, they're mostly just done to blend in, and they can change them at will. So they don't have to be they don't have to look the same all the time. So that is about it for my primer of the dragon aspects. Guys can feel free to ask questions. I purposely tried to not cover as much in order to kind of spawn some questions of how certain things worked, but I tried to address some things that I knew I was going to get asked.